probably look like a Wolverine. Uh, haven't had a haircut in a long time, but you know what? I feel that the content is far more important than this. I'll deal with it. This video is going to be long. Um, this video is going to be based on my long history in RVing, and I want this to be somewhat of a wake-up moment for a lot of people, even remotely considering getting into it, and also to answer a question from a friend that has asked what my thoughts are, because they're going through the phase where they're on a similar type journey, but they want to take it at a lower pace and also want to explore other things. So the biggest aspect of RVing is you need to realize that there's no such thing as a perfect RV. Okay, so majority of people when they purchase RVs, they do so impulsively. Like, you could be doing all research you want, okay? Like in my case, I have personally been inside of, like physically inside of more than 500 RVs. I'm not an RV dealer. I don't buy them at auctions. It's just that over the many years, I've done a lot of research trying to prevent myself from, ironically, having to buy a new RV every couple of years. And no matter how much I tried, it still happened. So the reason why I'm talking about it is because your average dealer will always tell you that averagely, and they're absolutely true, averagely people go to a new RV, like not necessarily new, but like new to them RV every 2 to 3 years, okay? And those are horrible statistics. When you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, I'm spending so much money and I'm about to take a nosedive on my investment because, you know, they do depreciate rapidly, but you're also trading them in. So why is that happening, and what is what? The wake-up moment for a lot of people thinking about getting into RVing or thinking about upgrading RVs or whatever is the circumstance is the fact that when RVs are being designed, they're not designed in such a way that they're meant to benefit you, the consumer. Okay, I'm gonna use some choice words because I do want this to be a wake-up moment. This is not. This is going to be PG-13 with some choice words. Okay, so they will razzle dazzle you and bullshit you with all sorts of trinkets. You know. Especially like all the, because there's like 17 billion videos on YouTube of dealerships trying to replicate Josh the RV nerd. Which, by the way, in case you're, if you want like the skinny on a lot of the RVs, okay, there's one channel on YouTube that you need to watch to do with RVing. Okay, he goes by the name of Josh the RV nerd. He's from Coldwater, Michigan. Hail It RV. You could type in any of those keywords into YouTube, and the dude just, I mean, his videos are like right on point without all that bullshit. You know, he just points out the good and he points out the bad. He gives, like, they all give tours, right? But one dealer would be like, wow, that's the coolest thing since Jesus, right? And the other one would be like, yeah, but a whole bunch of other ones also have it, right? So he basically brings it down to a more tolerable level, okay? So if you have a model in mind, 99% guarantee he already reviewed it, walked inside of it, more than likely multiple year models, etc. Okay? So, back to the topic at hand. The problem is the RVs are not designed to benefit you, okay? Which is the reason why, after being razzle-dazzled with all the trinkets to do with RVs, with all the little, right? They bullshit you to buying an RV, right? Now, it's a voluntary choice. It's not like they're holding you and choking you and forcing you to, you know, whip out your cash and spend money on it, right? A lot of people choose to create one their own, which is the reason why hashtag van life community just blew up into like unstoppable proportions. Where millennials and Gen Z are spending their parents' money by the truckload to basically create de facto Class B RVs. If you realize from the bottom of your heart that the RV that you're gonna buy, you're gonna be trading up, okay? It's gonna be a lot more tolerable for you to trade it up in a couple of years, because you're gonna be like, man, how could I be so stupid? I bought the wrong thing, right? And next time you go and buy the right thing, you're gonna own it for a couple of years and you'll be like, man, this thing just isn't working out for me, right? And then 2 years go by and so this is exactly the reason why I'm on my like 4th or 5th RV. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you about my journey, about how I got here. I started off with a teardrop trailer by Silver Shadow, Little Guy Silver Shadow. Okay, it's a tiny little sleeper that you pull behind your vehicle and you can't even notice it, right? It's a tiny, right? It's like people just, I remember when I got it, right? Those were like a novelty item. I couldn't even drive in a straight line. People were taking pictures and goosenecking and stopping me every 5 seconds, asking like a million questions. And that was the most adorable thing to buy, but it was a horrible purchase, because for all the benefits that it gave me, it had significant disadvantages. So for example, it was small, it was maneuverable. Believe it or not, I actually drove with it into a parking garage, multi-level, right? I could parallel park that thing on a beach. Honestly, I've clocked so much mileage with it, okay? But it wasn't working out for me because it had deficiencies in it. The kitchen and all of that stuff were way out in the back, right? So you had to like physically exit out of the unit to do anything. The fridge was tiny. You couldn't sit or stand inside of it. It was only meant for like sleeping. It had just adequate amount of storage so that, you know, it would get you by through the weekend sort of deal. It was also pricey. Unfavorably pricey. I didn't have bathroom, didn't have any of that stuff, right? It was just specifically meant for sleeping. It just wasn't working for me because I'm not a huge guy, right? I'm not 17 feet tall. I'm not 500 pounds, right? I'm like 5'9" and I weigh 180 pounds or so, right? Maybe a little bit less. I couldn't, it just wasn't working for me, right? So my next RV that I bought with intent because my family were like, wow, that's so cool. Let's all go camping together, right? So I bought it out of that. Right, and at the time my sisters were small, and they had like bunk beds, right, that were only meant for kids and not an adult, despite the fact that they advertised them for adults. And I was sleeping in the so-called booth dinette, where I had to like embrace a fetal position because 5'9" person cannot fit onto a booth dinette, despite the fact that it's marketed for an adult. Okay. And those are all like little trinkets that they drop on you. Be like, oh, it sleeps like 8 people. Well, no, it doesn't. It really sleeps 2 adults and like 5 kids that are this tall, right? Those are all the things that you need to think about. Okay. Or here's another one. So that trailer got us by for a couple of years. Here's the problem. Kids grow up, right? Those little beady-eyed bastards, right? So, and when we brought more than what we had in the family, it became a problem, right? And of course, the storage. I mean, you see all the cabinetry all around me, right? The storage is a huge, huge premium in RVs. And they'll bullshit you with like, oh, this thing has so much storage, just look at it, right? Yeah, but it's not usable storage. You can't use it. Like if I pan around this way, right? That over there, right? There's 2 huge bays. Okay? You stuff one pillow into it, it's going to occupy entire bloody thing. So for this trip, I had to basically use a jackhammer to pack everything in there. Three blankets and like 6 pillows. Okay, that's all that fits in there, and that thing is as wide as RV. Right? And your average storage, I mean, look at it. It's not that big. So that's going to be another significant problem for you. You know, it seems like it could work, but it very quickly becomes something that you just physically can't use. So, like, I'll give you an example, right? I'm just going to walk around. Here, I'm flip the lights on. Okay? This storage over here. What do you think you could store in there? Just for sake of argument. Like, what do you think you could possibly store in there? I put some cat food in there and a knee brace. That's it. Okay? Here's another one. This is storage on top of the fridge. Right? You put some paper stuff in it, and it's really not that much. Right? Here's another one. This one is very small. It's limited by this space. This is a popular one in RV industry. Right? The cabinet is taller than the space to put stuff into the actual cabinet. And you can't reach in the back. You, like, I'm 5'9", right? I can't, right? See where I'm getting at? Here's another one. Again, because I couldn't fit cat food and other things, right? But a lot of times what you do is you get this stuff over here. And I apologize, stuff just looks messy because honestly, after 6,000 miles, I don't care anymore. But, right, you have to pack things like a pack rat. That's not a good outcome for, like, you need organization. You know, because you don't want to be turned into a hoarder. And that seems to be prevalent in RV community. It's like full-timers. If you ever look in their YouTube videos, they open one cabinet and everything just like avalanches out the wazoo, right? Now, in my case, you know, I am all about organization. I have hooks. I have, like, inside my, right? See what I have? Everything has a place. Everything is neatly stored. Everything is, there's just things that, like, oh, here's another one. Right? I have 2 televisions inside this RV. I have never watched them. Right? They'll sell you on the stuff. They'll be like, wow, that's the coolest thing, right? I don't have time to watch TV. Right? How crazy is that? I have 2 televisions in my RV. They have never been turned on. Crazy, right? There's all those things that you have to think about. All those things, right? Don't be razzle-dazzled by the sales gimmicky stuff. There's no such thing as a perfect RV, because you're gonna buy one, you're gonna figure out that it sucks, and you're gonna go and buy another one. You're gonna figure out that it sucks, and you're gonna go and buy another one, and another one, and another one. And unfortunately, what people do is they go and spend their money within the constraints that they have. Like, for example, if they have a pickup truck, they go and buy a towable RV that they could tow behind their rig. Okay, well, I have a Toyota Tacoma, and it sucks for towing. Okay, so my only choice, logically speaking, was a trailer that's basically within its towing capacity. It has a towing capacity of 6,500 with a ton weight of like 500 or something like that, right? So you start looking at bigger RVs that weigh, I don't know, like 4,000 pounds and have like 600 ton weight. Well, those are out of the question, right? So you start looking at smaller ones, and at most you could tow like 3,800 because of how math works out, or something along the lines, right? And so At that point, my Toyota Tacoma has absolutely atrocious gas mileage. You know what it's like to have to drive somewhere and fill up every 150 miles? Well, I do. And when you that long towing something with a pickup truck, you can't just get into every single gas station, right? You don't think about it while you're driving your regular vehicle because you never have that constraint to even cogitate over, right? But every single gas station is designed exactly the stupid same. Whoever designed them needs to be whipped, honestly. The entrance to the gas station has a step like that, a ramp. Okay, so if you're towing anything, you're either hitting your tongue of the trailer or you're hitting the back of the trailer. Either or. Which is the reason why every single gas station has those giant scrape marks going in and out. People damage their units every single day. Another thing is when you pull into the gas station, typically they have a building over here, right? And then they have gas stations like this, and cars are parked over here, and you have to somehow get in there, right, with your trailer, and also be able to get out, and everybody's blocking you, and that stuff gets old really quick. I'm not kidding you. You have no idea just how difficult it is to find yourself a gas station so that you could embarrassingly fill up gas. I've endured that for so many years. Like even on this trip with this RV, it's the same difference. It's always the same kind of thing, right? And most people never think about that stuff when they go to the dealership, because they're like, wow, my head is in the clouds, right? Look at all those RVs, cool. Consider this like a slap in the face. All right, I'm like slapping you in the face with common sense, being like, hey, think about this stuff before, investing. Another thing, don't tow beyond your means. Like there's so many stupid people out there that will have a small SUV and tow something behind it. Don't be that guy. Right? Just because you could do so in a straight line doesn't mean that you're safe. I've seen, like on this trip coming back, I've seen so many of them with blown tires. Actually yesterday, perfect example, yesterday, the guy actually overturned. I kid you not, he overturned with his trailer, like belly up and everything. There were all sorts of cops and, interstate was all closed for it and stuff like that. Right? And he wasn't even turning an RV, towing an RV, right? He was just towing a regular trailer behind him. How crazy is that, right? You have to have the proper unit in order for you to tow something. Okay? So, if you don't have a truck right now, and you're thinking about buying a towable RV, well, consider the kind of truck that you need to buy for the kind of towable RV that you want. Another thing to consider is there's all sorts of different bazillion models, right? They're all the same, okay? It's like going to a taco store. It's like lettuce, tomatoes, onions, pickles, cucumbers, and a piece of meat. Or onions, lettuce, tomatoes, like they just kind of do this with the same, because it's all made by the same company. There's the Tiffin motorhome, and then there's the Thor, right? They're like the grandfather umbrella companies that are in Elkhart, Indiana. And what they do is they have RVs under their ownership that basically are the same things, right? That would be called something completely different. They just make identical copies with different names. Which is the reason why you go to dealerships and you're like, why does this Keystone look so much like, I'm just going to throw a name out there, like Jayco or something. And I don't know if they're the same. I'm just using that as an example. Right? Only because of how they design them. It's the same exact RV. The only thing different is the decals on the outside in the name. Okay? If you're thinking about a towable RV, whether it's a fifth wheel or just anything kind of like, think about how much effort you have to put into setting up camp, because if you have to pull up to the campsite and undo your slides, which don't buy RVs with slides, for all sorts of reasons. You could probably get away with buying a brand new RV with slides. Don't buy a used RV with slides, because there's going to be all sorts of mold and leakage, and RV slides fail and break, and it costs thousands to fix them. Normally, the way they're designed, they typically block something when all these slides are in, like your bathroom, your bed, your kitchen, or whatever else, right? Doesn't always apply, but most of the time. Plus, they add unnecessary weight to the whole unit, right? Let me just do this over here real quick. There we go. So obviously, to tow a fifth wheel, you need one hell of a pickup truck. I would suggest very strongly a dually, or like a 2500, 3500 series truck to tow, within. Always go substantially less than what your rated capacity is, because by the time you start adding things to your trailer, or maybe put stuff in the back of your pickup truck, like in my opinion, the granddaddy of them all, the most logical choice for a towable RV is a fifth wheel. That's just a bar none. I mean, it's like the golden goose of answering every kind of possible situation you might have. Like it's where you feel like a human being. It's unfortunately, that's common sense eludes a lot of people. Like there's been this return to minimalism as of late. People pursue a van dwelling, and all this tiny composting toilet, which if you use one, fine. I will never use one ever. But I'm just using that as a prime example. Like I need necessities in life because I work hard for my money, right? And I deserve to have adequate accommodation. So right there is a bathroom with a sink and a cabinet in which I could put medicines and other things, right? Over there is where there's a full standing shower, hot water and everything, right? Now, I don't just have solar shower, right? I have an actual shower. I have shower that has hot water, right? I have a heater right behind me. There's two buttons to heat the water up using gas or using 12. Well, I don't have 12 volts yet, but that's on the menu. Or 120, right? I flip the switch in the middle of a desert, hot shower, boom. I flip a switch in the middle of Colorado mountains where it's 34 degrees outside, hot shower, boom. Right? I go and sit on the throne like a normal human being, right? I don't have to have a 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot and put a pool noodle around it and, pardon my language, defecate into a plastic bag. Those are all things that will come to you after you pay your dues. And you don't want to be that guy or that girl that pays their dues, because it's only going to cost you a lot more. You start off small. You're like, well, I really don't need this much. Well, I could really work without it. Well, I could probably do it. Yeah, right. And you find yourself in a position where you're making, sort of excuses for not spending a couple of extra dollars up front and actually be able to enjoy everything, right? You don't have to have an RV to go camping. You don't have to have an RV to travel. On my travel, like I've just come back from a 6,000-mile trip. This is how people do it in Moab. Like Moab is just a prime example. People convert school buses and ambulances. They arrive there and sleep in cars, in $25 Walmart tents. They sleep in hammocks, right? They sleep in converted U-Haul trucks. They, some of them, sleep in boats. Like they're towing a boat and actually just put a roof over the boat and actually sleep inside the boat. right? You don't have to have an actual RV, but RV is designed in such a way that it allows you to have comforts of life. So I'm recording this, obviously, sitting down on my little booth, dream dinette. I keep calling it booth dinette. It's actually called dream dinette, right? It's a table with, a bench and a bench. So I've come to realize that despite the fact that I could convert this into a bed, I very much prefer to have a table, because that way when we're playing board games in the evening, like normal human beings, without being eaten up alive or by like a horde of mosquitoes outside, we could just leave the stuff over here and then go to sleep because we have a dedicated bed elsewhere. It's those creature comforts, they really set the tone for just feeling better about the space, right? And space is what you need. When you're cramped up like this, you're just not designed from the ground up to embrace minimalism. I mean, there's people that could do it, right? There's, people full-time on much smaller accommodations, but I need space. Like, I enjoy getting up and being able to walk there enough distance so that I could actually stretch my legs. Like, it makes me feel like I've actually done something productive with my life, if that makes any sense. Right? Should you own a drivable RV like I am, right? This is a Class C RV. There's also Class Bs, there's Class As, there's B+, there's Super C, there's C+, I'm guessing, whatever they're called, right? Think about it this way. Okay, my old Class C RV was a 2002 24-foot model. Okay, this is a 2016 29-foot model. My old RV had problems from the get-go that I was so happy to get rid of, it's not even funny. I took a significant hit just to get rid of that problem. Okay? It had fuel pump issues. Right? It wasn't broken. No, it was very much working. But it would work whenever it felt like it, and stop working whenever it felt like it. Right? I've been stuck on the corner of Duval in Key West, surrounded by like a bajillion drunk people, not being able to do anything because my RV wouldn't operate. I was stuck on the sides of mountains in Appalachia, North and South Carolina, on an incline, not being able to drive. Right? Those are all the things that you need to think about, right? If you're buying a motorized RV, the main thing that you need to think about is just how old it is. How much maintenance has been done on it. Like, I would legitimately rather pay more for a motorized RV and not have the kind of issues that will basically derail everything. Like, imagine, knock on wood, it hasn't happened, right? But like, if something happened to this RV while I was on my 6,000 mile trip, it would have been it. It would have been, that's it. SOL. Like, there's no places to fix RVs out there in Moab. There's no RV dealerships. There's no Ford dealerships. There's no mechanics that are adequate to work on this kind of crap. Right? Same thing with Colorado. On $1 Million Highway, right? There's plenty of places where, when something breaks, like we had a propane regulator break on the old Class C RV, right? You know how fun it is to be in the middle of summer, going somewhere in the mountains for 2 weeks with a malfunctioning fridge that doesn't work. You're in the middle of a national forest, like 20 plus miles away from civilization. It's a huge problem. Should you buy Class C RV or Class A RV or Class B RV? That's entirely up to you. I have made that logical choice. Just like a lot of full-timer RVs are rapidly, not even slowly, but like rapidly, a lot of the popular YouTube channels, they're all migrating to Class A's eventually, because the bigger the RV, the more creature comforts you have. You have more storage, you have more water capacity, you have a comfortable bathroom, you have oven, you have fridge, bigger fridge I'm talking about. You have, better microwave, you have better everything. You have better lighting, you have better seating arrangement, better bed situation, maybe in some cases places to put your washer and dryer, right? The bazillion cubic yards of storage, right? Those are all the things that people have eventually come to. So the natural trend line of people getting into RVing, they start off small with like a pop-up camper or something. Don't buy those. That's a horrible choice. A pop-up camper will take you forever to set up, forever to take down. Every time it rains, the water gets inside. If there's a bear outside, he's getting in, etc., etc., etc. Like, I have sat on the campground watching people try to set up their tents, right? Like, I pull up and I'm here. That's it. I don't have to do anything. And they spend like an hour and a half trying to set up everything. It just sucks. Like, you've just driven for 6 to 12 hours to get there. You're tired and exhausted and crabby and you want to rest. That's right. You have to set up the stupid RV. Right? And same goes for like towable RVs, There's people that hand crank all the stabilizers, right? Upgrade. Spend a couple $100 extra, get everything either automatic or like get a cordless drill with a chuck on it so that you could just put the stabilizers within 5 seconds and not 15 minutes. When you get into RVing, you start learning all those tricks out of necessity because they allow you to optimize your experience, right? And when you get to that level of optimization, that zen moment of zen, like, right, right, you then realize that you've spent all this effort for something that is not yours, something that you legitimately don't need, something that doesn't work for you. And then you go to the RV dealership and you upgrade into something that works better for you. I've seen so many different types of living arrangements on this road. 6,000 miles is a very long distance. I got to see a lot. I got to see creativity of people, of like do-it-yourself campers, vans, ambulances, school buses, like every kind of possible arrangement. Like you just go like, how is that even possible? They've done it, right? And people's creativity, like I have people put legitimate tiny homes on top of Toyota Tacomas, right? I've seen people like a truck camper. That's another good thing. I mean, granted it's tiny, but still, it's a very valid choice. A tremendous thing to consider is what exactly are you planning to do and whether your plans are subject to change. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I stayed in Campbell Campground for some time in Silverton, Colorado, right? It has a 14-day camping limit. I'm gonna leave that one open-ended because I've already covered my stay there, right? The space for bigger RVs is extremely limited, right? The more unlevel the site, the more difficult it is for you to level. So just because you have a bigger rig doesn't mean that it's also beneficial. If you're a tiny whippersnapper, like a truck camper, a van, anything like that, you could just back that sucker in between the trees, find yourself a perfect piece of heaven and that's it, right? When you're big, you don't have that luxury. There's all of that to consider. All of that to consider. And of course, when it comes to modifications, you modify everything that you do doesn't hold value. I mean, it's meaningless. When you go to trade to the dealership, they don't care that you have 10,000 watts of solar on the roof. Take it off before you go there. They don't care. They're not gonna give you extra money just because you have like a 600 amp hour lithium battery bank. Take it off. They don't care. If you need to modify anything to make it yours, do it like I've done on this rig, where it doesn't look like I've done anything, right? Because everything is hidden, so that when I take it off, and if I ever decide to like trade, which I don't rule out, honestly, it's just a thing. You also have to think about modifications and what that means to you. Like, how sustainable do you want to be? If all you do is go, campground to campground, or Boonedocking to your friend's house, you don't need to modify anything, period, right? You just don't. That's it. If you're constantly on the road, traveling hundreds of miles every day, you could probably get by with just having a battery bank and having DC to DC charger. You just trickle charge off your alternator to charge your battery bank. You just set up your DC to DC charger in such a way that it, works with whatever battery arrangement that you have. But in my case, I have a massive solar system. I've embraced battery banks and having all those modifications that I've done, right? It's the mother of necessity that you have to think. It's independent. You could have any kind of RV, But those are the things that you need to factor into your purchase price, because you not only go to buy an RV, but you also, like, for example, if you buy a towable, you need a weight distribution hitch. That's an additional $700. If you spend $400 or $500, you're going to regret that purchase, because then you, like a moron, will stand there with a giant bar and go, and then just smack yourself in the head and your teeth go flying. I've seen that one too many times, right? You need proper weight distribution hitch by a company like Blue Ox. Not sponsored by them, I'm just telling you. As a matter of fact, that's what I used on my towable camper when I had it, right? You need to think about just how easy it should be for you, because all those little inconveniences just add up, like an overflowing cup, just go, and at some point, when it gets over here and begins overflowing, that's when you start being pissed off. You don't want to be in that zone. You want things to be smooth. Like when I roll up to a campground, you know what I do? That's right, nothing. Nothing, because I've already done everything. Right? I don't take out stuff, put it out to the yard like a lot of people, all the moving, right? Everything is here. Like you know why? Because I could just turn the key and drive off. I don't have to spend 65 minutes trying to pack camp, if you know what I mean. It doesn't take me anything to set up. I don't have to deal with stabilizers. I don't have to deal with levelers. I don't have, I just roll up, turn off the RV. That's it. I'm done. Like, and again, I got here because I've paid my dues. I had a little teardrop trailer. I've had a towable trailer, right? I've had a small class CRV. Now I have a bigger class CRV, right? I just can't. I don't see myself spending a lot of my time on all the inconveniences that come with RVing. And there are some icky things, like for example, people go, you have to deal with sewer and the right? I don't even use my gloves. I often pull up to the dump stations, right, and people start putting gloves and touch it like so, right? I don't even use gloves because when you optimize your process and you know what the hell to do, it goes like this, right? It like I kid you not, I could dump both tanks and be on my way in like less than 2 minutes. I pull up, turn the engine off, go to the back, take the sewer hose, right, with already connected elbow to it, connect, pull the lever, bam, pull another lever, bam, right? Take the hose off, take the whatchamacallit, the hose that typically is at the dump stations. Rinse the hose, swish it and swirl it a couple of times, pack everything, put everything back, and I'm on my way, right? I mean, well, I do wash off my hands with like regular water, but there's no like crap flying anywhere, right? You just have to know what to do. You need to optimize all the inconveniences of whatever RV choice that you have, so that you don't have to deal with that. Long distance, short distance, those like you have to mature into whatever system that you want to buy. Yeah, every single one of them has advantages and every single one of them has disadvantages. Like, for example, a truck camper is versatile, right? You could get into a forest, right? But it's tiny. It is tiny. But the benefit is you could tow a 4x4 right behind it. So you have a pickup truck with a truck camper with a towable Jeep, for example. You could go off-road or you could tow a boat or whatever, right? But it's fairly small, or you could have a towable trailer. Now, some of them actually have like toy haulers, so you could store a kayak inside of it or something. Or people store like UTVs and side-by-sides in those toy hauler things. But again, if you want more, it's going to be a longer trailer, which will require, a better truck, right? So there's that consideration. If you have a van, you could parallel park that thing in downtown Miami and nobody will know. Whether you have a do-it-yourself van, and that road has been paved from here out the wazoo. There's websites out there where you don't even have to like think about it. You just click and order. They will ship you entire conversion kit. Or you could go to Lowe's or Home Depot and basically buy everything and do everything within like a week. There's no such thing as the best RV for you. You'll never buy one that's like the best thing for you. But if you are making that purchase, my advice to you is don't buy it around what you already have. Okay, don't buy it around the pickup truck that you already have. Don't. That's a really bad way of doing it. Okay? Don't. You need to buy the RV and then buy a pickup truck for the RV, not the other way around. Unless you already have, 3,500 or higher rated pickup truck. It's as simple as that. You always want to err on the side of caution. Your vehicle needs to be a lot more capable than the weight that you tow in behind. That's just a given. You don't want to be anywhere near your limits. If money was no object, and I had to like recommend somebody anything, I would say stay away from pop-up campers. Just stay away from them. In order of, I guess, desirability, a towable trailer is perfect for anybody who is like a weekend warrior that needs to go to their local campground. Okay? They don't have to drive far. Okay. Sometimes, maybe once a year, they have to drive like 6 hours. Okay, yes, that's one exception. Okay, if you're perpetually traveling all the time and you live out of your RV, the most logical choice is to either have a fifth wheel that limits you for stuff that you do. So you're not gonna be able to, off-road, for example, if you're into that kind of stuff. But you have tons of options, including toy hauler fifth wheels, where you could store your toys inside, right? Um, Class C, obviously, or Class A. You know, if you're going with solar systems, you need all the roof real estate that you can. And when you go with solar, don't just start small. Go out and buy the full shebang, because you're going to grow your system anyways, right? Like I have a 1,000 watt system. I'm thinking of expanding it to 1,500. Right? I started off with 500. You need all the roof space. So the roof space typically comes with bigger units. If you're an adventurer type that likes to go, say, middle of the forest, maybe some very light off-roading type thing where you're like driving up the mountainside or something. Truck camper. That I'm actually contemplating one myself. I don't know if I'm gonna go that route, but I have seen enough of them being utilized in Moab and in Colorado that the thought just kind of like stuck right there somewhere, and it's turning and turning because there's all sorts of cool places where you could take them. Like for example, in Florida here, there's a DeSoto Park in St. Petersburg or Clearwater, whatever it's called, right? Where you're not allowed to take your RVs, but you could take a truck camper, right? They're quick little whippersnappers. But again, you need a very powerful pickup truck, and typically truck campers also cost a very hefty sum of money, right? Let me do this real quick again. Sorry about that. If you're like just need to get around, I would say a towable RV is a decent thing. If you don't have a family that you need stuck inside RV, in-laws, kids, parents, that kind of stuff, the world is your oyster. My advice to you is get yourself a good bed, good sized bed, so that you could sleep like a king and get much deserved rest. Obviously, change out the crappy mattress that comes with the RV. You need to be able to relax and feel comfortable inside RV if you're staying in RV for long term. Like it's one thing to be in one for the weekend, but in my case, I was in it for 3 months, right? That was one heck of a thing. Imagine if I didn't like the experience. I would have hated all of it, right? So you need to invest into a kind of system that is just that works for you, right? And I'm so glad that like this is my 4th or 5th RV that I've been able to mature, because have I tried to do this in my previous ones? Nah. My advice is go big. Whether it's a big fifth wheel, a big Class A, a big Class C, no slides, tons of roof real estate for the solar panels. Pick up a generator from Harbor Freight, like one of those quiet inverter type things or whatever they're called, right? If your RV doesn't come with the generator. But either way, pick up an extra one in case it breaks. You need to have all the creature comforts. I don't care how big it is. Like it could be a 13-foot size trailer, but make sure that it has adequate things for you. You need a big fridge, not a tiny one. Like if it's one of those that are like half height of a human baby, nah. when you spend time away from civilization like I have, you begin to appreciate exactly why you have a big fridge, because you are dependent. And actually, in my case, I'm gonna spin this around for a minute. This is an additional fridge that I bought specifically for the 6,000 mile trip. Amazon sells a whole bunch of different ones, so this is 55 liter variety, right? 12 volts, because that way I could use it either as a freezer or as a fridge, in addition to my regular fridge, right? And again, my fridge has a freezer and a fridge, right? So I want to be inside an RV that feels like a home, right? I don't want to be inside an RV that feels like I have just the bare minimum to survive. If I had to do this over again, and I hope to have a chance to do this again, there's going to be a lot of changes. So the very first one that's going to happen in that respect is, obviously I've talked about it ad nauseum, but just to recap, my truck is going, and I'm gonna get a Jeep so that I could tow it behind my RV. Okay, that's just a given. I have, I'm an avid kayaker, right? I got kayaks in my storage shed that I keep. But when I travel, I have blow-up kayaks. It works, right? But it is annoying as hell to have to set it up every single time. It's just, it's a problem that I hope to rectify, hopefully, eventually one day. I know that people with bigger RVs have the pleasure of not having that problem, because they could just put their, their toys in the back and not have to worry about it. It's another thing that I'm keeping a very close eye on. In addition to the truck camper, I have this crazy idea of a possibility of a fifth wheel. I can't buy a Class A unless I move homes. I could barely squeeze my motorhome into my driveway as it is right now. And that's another thing to consider, right? When you go big, you start having limitations. Like not being able to, park. How about that one? I guess to each his own. My advice is to, see what's out there, and don't buy anything until you're like 1,000,000% sold on the idea that you're gonna be doing it, how you're gonna be doing it, where you're gonna be doing it, who you're gonna be doing it with, how much you're gonna be traveling, how often you're gonna be packing camp and leaving, whether you're gonna be boondocking out in the sticks or whether you're gonna be in campgrounds, because those are all the things that either financially break your wallet or don't even impact you in the slightest. And always be the captain of your own vessel. Don't allow anybody to give you directions. There's so many people that have damaged and crushed their RVs trying to get into campsites where the help, typically like a camp host or something, give you horrible instructions. If you have a navigator, make sure that your navigator doesn't suck, because the price for breaking anything is extremely high, right? If you buy an RV, make sure there's no leaks, there's no mold, it's mechanically sound. Even if it takes you substantially longer to find one, trust me on it. It's better not to have to deal with those things. I have, when I bought this unit, there were some concerns that I had. And those concerns became a major problem that I now have to fix. And in case you're wondering just how many problems I have to fix, See this? See this? Right? 68 things. 68 right there. 68 right here. 68 things that have to be rectified because of the 6,000-mile trip. Major and minor. Right? You want to avoid being in that kind of situation. Now, I have a 2016 model RV, right? So I'm at the point where you know, I have a newer RV that has 68 issues that have to be addressed. Imagine how many issues exist in an older RV. So there, it's cheaper. You know, you get sold on the idea like, here's my budget. Oh, that's all I can afford. Well, here it is, right? And then you find yourself in a kind of situation where you've spent all that money, and now you have to start shelling out all this extra cash and all this extra cash and all this extra cash. The older the unit, the more expensive it is for you to deal with the kind of issues. It's very difficult to pick the right one because there is no right one, you know. When RVs are being designed in such a way not to benefit you, the consumer, it's no surprise that so many people, you know, perpetually switch. And I think it's okay to switch. It's just an expensive proposition, if you know what I mean. You know, because RVing is an expensive hobby. You know, for full-timers, it's really not a surprise why so many of them pick giant, you know, fifth wheels and giant Class A's. A typical family might go with a towable, maybe like a Class C with slides. But people constantly upgrade and downgrade, upsize and downsize, all like within this one trip. I mean, I've demonstrated with my series. Now, mind you, I haven't posted any of the like actual recordings of my travels. That's forthcoming, but you know, based on my like little vlogs with the cell phone, you know, you've seen all the issues that I've had on the 6,000-mile trip. You know, in some cases I couldn't get in. In some cases I couldn't get out. In some cases I got stuck. Right? And those are all the issues that you tend to have when, you know, your rig is too big or not too small or not big enough or not powerful enough or whatever is the circumstance, right? And then when you juxtapose that against like, for example, when I was in Colorado, right, there were a whole bunch of people with truck campers over there. They just go right between the. You go like, oh, okay. Huh. It's a very difficult decision. Don't make a mistake of having to buy your best RV for the 5th time. That's my biggest advice to anybody. You know, when you think about long distance trips like I've just had to do, and spending a lot of time with yourself in your RV or in a company or family or whatever is the circumstance that applies, you know, everything needs to work. Everything needs to function. You need to have a backup for a backup for a backup. You know, because I didn't have, well, my backup for a backup failed, and my backup failed, and now I have a dead cat because of it, right? So, I know it's been a long video. I hope it smacks some common sense into anybody that's thinking about getting into RVing. Do a lot of research and buy a lot more than what you need at this particular moment, because there's going to be a point in the future where you're gonna be like, you know what, this guy, you know, he had a 1 hour long video, but he was so right. I'm so happy that I bought something that works for me despite the fact that I had to spend a little bit more money on it. If you have any questions, put in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer.